Ohio State 39, Penn State 38. Yes, it's been 2 days, and I know that you already know the score, and we've seen it all over the place and on the internet, and it's emblazoned in a lot of people's minds. But I just figure that mostly Ohio State fans are watching this, and you're not sick of knowing that you came back from 18 down to win the biggest game of the year to date. All right, we got Claire Crawford on the line from the ozone.net. You've got to join her on her podcast. It's a must for Buckeye fans. Oh, Hail No. She co-hosts it with Joe Dexter. Claire, how you doing tonight?
I've got a few more grays in there, I think, from that game. But other than that, I think I'm looking forward to watching the Buckeyes move forward in the season.
If that kind of game is going to bring out a few gray hairs, it's probably impossible that any more gray is going to come from one particular game, because that pretty much drove us all to the hilt, whether you were an Ohio State fan, Penn State fan, or neutral, whatever the situation, obviously for the two teams invested in the game in particular. So I know what ESPN said the win probability was at a certain point in the game, which I have huge issues with their win probability factor. It doesn't make sense, but let's give it a little credibility. It was like 98 or 99%. What was the Claire win probability for Ohio State when it was, let's say, 35-20 with 5 minutes left?
35-20, 5 minutes left. The Claire winning probability was at like a 40% for Ohio State. I honestly...
That's pretty good.
It was better than I should have been, knowing myself. I watched JT Barrett in the fourth quarter of that football game completely transform the offense, completely transform who we know as fans, who he could be as a quarterback, who these receivers could be. And it was almost as if, because this was everything on the line, we knew they could go into this like gunslinger mode. If you're playing a video game, you're going to play in gunslinger mode. And it was almost as if he were playing better with not having to think so much, and he's not being overcoached, and they're just playing pitch and catch out there.
Claire, I try not to go off on play calling, because I hear all these other people going off on play calling, and I realize these guys know 1,000 times more than I will ever know. I'm not going to question the play calling. The plays look good when they're executed and they work. They don't look good when they're not. There's about 95% at least truth to that. But it just seemed to be like a game plan built on wide receiver screens. And I just got so sick of seeing swing passes to running backs and wide receiver screens and all the stuff that we saw against Oklahoma that didn't work in going side to side. And it just doesn't seem like a reasonable
fan to watch that happen. And I understand that it's a necessary part of spreading the field in that offense, but there's a problem when the wide receivers are not doing their job to block for that play. It's not going to work. And if they know it's not going to work and they can see that these defenses are sniffing this out, it was like a loss almost every time they tried to run that bubble screen or that little swing pass to the perimeter. It was not working. And they ended up, it was so frustrating as a fan to see it happen time and time again. And again, we're not there. It's easy to play, couch quarterback or couch coach, but that was the piece of the play calling that I was just confused by. Penn State had no problem sniffing that out.
There was also a drive, Claire, at the point in which the game seemed to be getting a little bit out of hand, 14-0, maybe it was 21-3, something in that range, where they had a drive where J.K. Dobbins got one carry and he ripped off like a 22-yard run. And that got them close to the red zone, and they threw 3 swing passes right after that. And I was just wondering, okay, J.K. Dobbins just ripped off a run. Can we not see one more running play? Can we not see the offensive line just impose its will and see if that's going to be part of the success factor in this game, is running the ball and power running that Urban Meyer talks about all the time?
Especially with with two successful tailbacks that would be more than happy to absolutely do that. And the difficult part, and then that position on the field too, it was odd for them to be running that. That would be a perfect time to put that package in.
So to your point, Claire, yes, when the game got to a point where the only way you can win is to throw the ball down the field, and all the cutesy stuff was thrown to the side, and it was JT Barrett setting up in the pocket, that's when he just went off. And the confidence and the precision in which he has passed and the velocity in which he has thrown the ball for the last 5 weeks showed us that it wasn't the opponent, that he has, maybe he did have some kind of injury at the end of last season. Maybe his arm wasn't to where it needed to be. Maybe there was also because of him losing trust in his offensive line and in his playmakers on the outside, that he was aiming the ball and short-arming the ball and just hoping it would get there. But man, he was cutting it loose and just ripping those throws downfield. It was impressive.
Into coverage. I mean, it was in such a tight window that he was squeezing these passes into. So many times I thought, well, that's a pick. It's done. This is over. This is it. But no, and the receivers did an absolutely fantastic job of being really physical. We saw some questionable officiating on both sides of the ball, and the receivers ended up stepping up and making no doubt about it.
Yeah, in particular, I can think of at least 2 times when a Penn State player dove for the ball, and because of where the camera angle was coming from, I thought, interception. Yep. Looked like an interception. Yeah, it was quite the game. Quite the comeback. Ohio State, when they get themselves together and put together an A effort, as they did, not for the entire game, but for the fourth quarter, that's what they can bring. Penn State, I don't think this says much about Penn State. It doesn't say anything about Penn State not being good enough. They are one of the top roughly 5 teams in the country. They're that good. It's just that that the Buckeyes put it together when they needed to.